I had a question to Brother Muhammad Hijab
Yes.
regarding Ibn Taymiyyah.
Okay.
So I had recently read some books of Ibn Taymiyyah, and in that he has a very controversial statement about the genus of Hawadis. Then I had a conversation with Jake, the Muslim metaphysician, regarding that. So he told me, my English is very bad. I am very sorry for that because I am
your
from
English,
Kashmir. So
no, oh, mashallah, Kashmiri. No, your English is perfectly
Which
fine.
part of Kashmir?
I am from Indian Kashmir.
You're from occupied Kashmir.
No, first of all, tell us what's going on there, man.
Actually, it may not
Huh?
be.
Actually, okay, don't tell
Yeah.
us anything.
Yeah.
So when I had a conversation with Jake, the Muslim metaphysician, he told me that Ibn Taymiyyah was a nominalist. So he had made a claim that genus of Hawadis has no beginning, while genus is a universal category. But what Ibn Taymiyyah means when he says that genus of Hawadis has no beginning, what actually Ibn Taymiyyah means?
No, it doesn't say that. What Ibn Taymiyyah mentions in Dar al-Tarab al-Aqli wal-Naql, which is the lack of contradictions between Aql and Naql, or the intellect and the text. What he mentions is something called Hawaadithu La Awwala Laha, that there's the Hawadith, or that things that begin to exist which there's no beginning to it. And meaning, this is what he believed. Ibn Taymiyyah, because he mentioned Allah is al-Khallaq. This is his argument. He said Allah is Khallaq, which means it's different to Khaliq. It's Sighat Mubalagha. So he's continually continually creating into the past and into the future. And he says that, say for example, Allah created, one universe, and then he created another universe, and then he created another universe, and then he created another universe. Each universe has a beginning, okay? Or each khalq, each makhluqa has a beginning, but this process does not have a beginning. So long as Allah has always been created, basically, this is his idea. Pre-eternally and post-eternally. So pre-eternally into the past, he's been always creating, and post-eternally, and this is his view. Now, some people misrepresent his view, to be honest, especially from the Ash'ari camp, and some have gone too far in this, and they say that he believes in Qidam al-Alam. This is false. This is absolutely false. Yeah, I've heard people that are meant to be academics, but they're quite polemical, and he does not believe in Qidam al-Alam. He does not believe the eternality of the universe. In fact, he categorically is opposed to the eternality of the universe, which is what Ibn Sina believed, Avicenna. He doesn't believe in that, but he believes that each thing has a beginning, but then Allah kept creating backward. And basically, this is what he's saying. He's basically saying, if you go to Jannah, if you go to Jannah, you keep wanting things, and if for example, I wanted an apple in Jannah, and then I wanted another apple, and then ad infinitum into the future. So is there any problem in believing in that? If you believe in an eternal Jannah, there's no problem in believing in that. So if you could believe in a post-eternal creation of things, post-eternity, he would say there's no much difference between that and pre-eternity. Now, logically, it's not too much of a redundant argument at all. In fact, it solves a lot of problems in dealing with atheists who believe in that infinite multiverse. So you can believe in an infinite multiverse. It doesn't contradict theistic conceptions, or this kind of theistic conception. From a Naqli perspective, or from a theological perspective, this is not a common view. This is not a common view. And in fact, we have statements from the Salaf, very clear statements from the Salaf, that talk about the first thing that was created was a qalam. Awwal man khuliqa al-qalam. The first thing that was created is a qalam. Awwal man khuliqa al-arsh, or the ma'. And there's discussion. What was the first thing that was created? You can get even aqwal from Umar ibn Khattab with asanid, which are pretty good, And there's a book called Al-Jami', which I have at home, which basically it collates all of the aqwal of the Salaf on these matters. And it's a black book. It's quite a popular one. That anyway, the point is, you'll find in Tafsir Tabari, for example, when he's talking about نون والقلم وما يسطرون ما أنت بنعمة ربك بمجنون. Chapter 68, verse 1 and 2. His tafsir of this very clear discussion among the Salaf, the predecessors. So one can argue that Ibn Taymiyyah, he had his istinbat, he had his extrapolation, but the Salaf were not on his idea here. You can argue that the predecessors had an idea and Ibn Taymiyyah had another idea. You can argue that. And this is where some people will refute and say, oh, look, he's saying that Ibn Taymiyyah went against the Salaf. I'm saying that Ibn Taymiyyah had his own ideas and so he's not trying to go against the Salaf, but I can give you aqwal from the Salaf which go against what Ibn Taymiyyah is saying in this matter. So say what you want to say, but it's for me it's very clear that it's a stronger textual and theological argument to believe that there was a creation. And you know, Ibn Taymiyyah goes through some hoops in order to explain the hadith كان الله ولم يكن شيء معه وكان عرشه على الماء, that Allah was there and there was nothing with him, and that his arsh or his throne was on the mat. You know, and he goes through some hoops to try and explain that, because obviously if you say كان الله ولم يكن شيء معه, that Allah was there and there's nothing with him, obviously it suggests that he created ex nihilo, right? But he says well the hadith says وَكَانَ عَرْشُهُ عَلَى الْمَاءِ وَكَانَ عَرْشُهُ عَلَى الْمَاءِ, that his arsh was on the mat, which indicates the mat was there, the water was there. Yeah, but that's one could argue it's a redundant point, and one that doesn't take away. Otherwise, what's the point of mentioning in the hadith كَانَ اللَّهُ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ شَيْءٌ مَعَهُ? You know, وَكَانَ عَرْشُهُ عَلَى الْمَاءِ seems to be in addition to that. It's not going against. So for me, and this is my own conclusion, I don't think Ibn Taymiyyah is in line with what the Salaf has said on this matter. I think the Salaf has made it very clear that there was something that was first created, which is either the qalam or the arsh or the ma'. Allah created from nothing. That seems to be the stronger theological position. Ibn Qayyim takes Ibn Taymiyyah's view, as usual, quite frankly. But his logical reasoning, I don't think, is wrong. I think he's making a very clear point. Yeah, he was going against Fakhruddin al-Razi, and he mentions that and he was making good points actually against him on a logical basis. But I think on this point, textually, it's not the strongest argument.
Jazakallah khair for that answer, Hijab.
But brother, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
The problem with Kalam theologians' argument is that they say that it was eternally impossible for God to act, because they say the act is which has beginning. So I think Ibn Taymiyyah has, in this context, he has say that God's actions had no beginning, because it will create a problem for also the Kalam theologians' point, because what Kalam theologians affirm is that they say that God has beginning to his actions. So it creates a problem for Kalam theologians' argument, which they make.
Thing is, Allah is afu, ghafur, yeah? Allah is all pardoning, all forgiving. But unless one wants to postulate the fact that human beings always was there for Allah to be pardoning of, and that the subject of pardoning and
good point.
Yeah, and forgiveness had to always be there, then I don't think there's any logical contradiction in believing that Allah has a sifa, or has an attribute which is he postdates the use of. In fact, this is exactly what Al-Ghazali mentions. Al-Ghazali mentions al-khalq, and he says that what's the problem with believing that Allah postdates his creation? And he mentions the example of a man saying to his wife, if you leave the house or something like that, or in 1 week you'll be divorced. He says that that man has always had the ability to divorce his wife, but he postdating the divorce is similar in this case to Allah postdating the creation. So if that can be done, then clearly the other things can be done as well.
But brother Muhammad Hijab, what Ibn Taymiyyah has posed an argument against Ghazali is that Ghazali has made the argument from eternal will. He says that God's will is eternal. But Ibn Taymiyyah is saying that if God's will is eternal, then how can anything be temporal in the world?
Okay.
Because if Allah wills something, then it happens without any doubt and without any delay.
Sure. So, brother, you've asked another follow-up question, and because we have loads of people waiting, if you can give a swift reply, we can move on, because loads of people are posting their questions. I want to try and give everyone a bit more time.
Okay, Jazakallah for it. So my actually question is that how can we make compatible the concept of genus of Hawadis with Ibn
So-
Taymiyyah's
So, brother,
nominalism approach, which is sort of nominalism?
Nominalism is not this. Nominalism is the idea that
Yes, it is sort of moderate realism, we can say, because he believes that universals only exist in mind.
say again.
I think Ibn Taymiyyah is, I think, more proper term will be moderate realism. He was a moderate realist.
You could call him a conceptualist, because a conceptualist is different to a nominalist. A conceptualist is something that believes that abstract ideas can exist in the mind, but they don't necessarily exist outside, like as a Neoplatonic form or something like that. So he the closest thing, that label that would probably suit his ideology. And let me actually read something for you. What exactly he said, because I know people are going to say, well, what's the example, what's the evidence of it? So
Jazakallah, brother.
Yeah. I mean, read exactly what he said. Let me see. Okay. Oh, okay. Actually, I'll just give the reference because it's going to take too long in it. It's Majmu'at al-Fatawa, volume 17, page 180. Yeah, you can see what his view is. Majmu'at al-Fatawa, volume.
how on earth did you find that so quick?
Now, I've got all those things on my, because I
Ready to debate at any point. Allah.
basically he's saying that the falasifa and the manatiqa and the kalamiyun, or the mutakallimun, that all those guys, they were speaking about things in a certain manner. But he says that the universals, genus, the top, like the genus universals, that they're only in the mind, they only exist in the mind. Now, in Western philosophy, this is referred to as conceptualism. It's not referred to as nominalism. Nominalism is when you deny universals exist in any way. You see?
Yes.
So I would say he's probably more of a conceptualist. Frank Griffel, interestingly enough, indicates, or he thinks at least, that Ghazali was also a nominalist. But I think that's a difficult case to make. He does mention that in his book on Ghazali.
Yeah. Jazakallah khair, brother Abrar.
Okay. Thank you, brother Sabur. Well, actually, I had a short question for you also, brother Sabur.
It'd probably be
Very short. It's very short.
No, brother.
What are your views about Dr. Iyad Kunabi?
So the thing is, brother, that we've got loads of people in the chat. So I'm going to allow only one time. But Dr. Iyad is, mashallah, a legend. I've been communicating with him as well. He's doing some fantastic work.